We're going to keep Bagram, not because of Afghanistan, but because of China.
China is fully prepared to fight to the very end.
Meanwhile, somewhere in the Forbidden Land, two of the biggest nuclear forces are joining hands. While long-standing conflicts simmer just beneath the surface, superpowers are displaying their military strength and pushing boundaries, sometimes literally.
Rare video of a border clash between Indian and Chinese troops has gone viral on social media.
It seems uncannily familiar, as if the most troubling periods of history are starting to recur. The actual question, though, is this: has World War III already started? More importantly, who would support whom? Turns out, East versus West is no longer the exclusive option. The world is different now. Few people fully comprehend how the world map has changed due to political ambitions, economic interests, regional conflicts, and clandestine alliances. Would the nations of NATO and the United States immediately unite? Most likely. But what about nations like Turkey?
We reiterated our strong support to the people of Pakistan.
Yes, they frequently play both sides and often find themselves at strategic crossroads. Meanwhile, the rest of the world burns. Would China openly back Russia, or would it quietly pursue its own expansionist objectives in Asia? It's clear the allegiance of the current century is more dangerous and hazier than ever. Now pay attention till the end of this video. This could alter your perspective on the world.
도로 국경 자동차 다리 건설의 착공을 드디어 선포하게 된다는 사실은 우리 모두를 매우 기쁘게 하여 주고 있습니다.
Russia and North Korea, the new bond. While two of the most notorious countries are smiling over their renewed friendship, concerns are being raised in Western world about the growing links between them. Although they have always operated on the periphery of international diplomacy, recent events indicate that their partnership is about to enter a more strategic stage. High-level encounters between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin increased in frequency and visibility in 2023 and 2024. In September 2023, Kim made an uncommon trip to Russia, which was not only symbolic, but also had the potential to be revolutionary. North Korea adds unpredictability and geographic leverage. It is always a strategic issue because of its closeness to US allies like Japan and South Korea. In contrast, Russia has the greatest nuclear arsenal in the world, worldwide reach, and military know-how.
И его значение выходит далеко за рамки просто инженерной задачи. Он символизирует наше общее стремление к укреплению.
Although this alliance isn't formally established by a treaty, it is strengthened by reciprocal advantages. Russia seeks diplomatic support and weapons during its conflict in Ukraine, while North Korea seeks recognition and scientific advancement. Additionally, there is a rise in symbolism, including the sharing of presents, ceremonial weapons, and discussions of comradely solidarity. The underlying message that these countries, cut off from most of the rest of the world, are finding strength in one another is evident despite the theatrical nature of some of the actions. Western officials warn that the Asia-Pacific area might become unstable if North Korea becomes more militaristic with support from Russia. Russia is indicating that it still has allies who are prepared to challenge the status quo in the world. This goes beyond mere posturing. Power dynamics in the region and the world may change as a result of this intentional alignment. But while Russia and North Korea draw closer in the east across the Pacific, another tension brews. And this one could rewrite the rules of global diplomacy if one familiar face returns to power.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond.
The Trump factor, China's nightmare. Donald Trump is the wild card on the international scene back in the United States. The prospect of Trump retaking the White House caused a stir in diplomatic circles, particularly in Beijing, after the 2024 US election. Why? Due to Trump's disregard for conventional foreign policy norms. And that's exactly what he did.
They're getting absolutely hammered in China.
Trump began a full-scale trade war with China during his first term, accusing Beijing of unfair trade practices. currency manipulation, and intellectual property theft, while enacting tariffs totaling hundreds of billions of dollars. It was a protracted economic conflict that shook international markets, not just rhetoric. By publicly doubting the worth of NATO, withdrawing the United States from multilateral agreements, and establishing connections with strongman leaders such as Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, he also defied international conventions. The Allies were left in suspense, rivals keeping a tight eye on things. Trump might lead the United States to adopt a more isolationist, inward-looking posture if he returns, or he might adopt a far more aggressive one, especially toward China. Taiwan is the most essential place for this. Growing military tension has been centered on the island democracy, which China claims as its own.
Jeff, Taiwan has long been the most tense flashpoint between Washington and Beijing. By law, the U.S. is required to help Taiwan defend its democracy, which also produces the vast majority of the world's most advanced computer chips.
Through the Taiwan Strait, the U.S. Navy frequently carries out freedom of navigation missions. Taiwan's defenses are still being tested by Chinese fighter jets and cruisers. A single mistake, such as a collision or a miscalculation, could lead to a larger war. More sanctions, harsher language, and perhaps more forceful military posture in the Indo-Pacific region might all be part of a second Trump administration. That may quickly escalate the situation for Beijing. Trump, whether you like him or not, is a symbol of uncertainty.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
However, China does not want uncertainty in a world that is already on the verge of collapse.
If the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
The Trump factor may be the catalyst or the detonator for the Asia-Pacific region. As superpowers size each other up in the Pacific, let's not forget another flashpoint, one that's been simmering for decades. South Asia, where history, borders, and rivalries collide.
India will identify, track, and punish every terrorist and their backer.
India, Pakistan, and China, a tense triangle. One of the most unstable triangles in the world, that comprising China, India, and Pakistan, is still getting closer. India and Pakistan have had a tense ceasefire for decades, interspersed by terrorist attacks, skirmishes, and standoffs, especially with relation to the disputed Kashmir area. Both have strong militaries, are nuclear armed, and are not easily intimidated. But when China is involved, the situation becomes much riskier. The all-weather friendship between China and Pakistan is based on decades of economic, political, and military collaboration. As part of its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has spent billions of dollars in Pakistan through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which includes infrastructure constructed through disputed Kashmiri land. That's a red line for India. Pakistan will very certainly support China in any future international battle, not only out of loyalty, but also out of necessity. The alliance has been difficult to overlook due to its diplomatic support, economic assistance, and military support.
It's the first time for us to have a formal meeting in 5 years' time. Both the people in our two countries and the international community are paying great attention to our meeting.
India, meantime, is forging its own path. New Delhi has increasingly turned more toward the West, notwithstanding its long-standing commitment to strategic autonomy. In addition to fortifying ties through the Quad, a strategic alliance with Japan and Australia intended to counterbalance China in the Indo-Pacific, it has inked significant defense agreements with the United States and France. The question is, however, would India's Western allies genuinely intervene when hostilities escalate into gunfire, or will prudence trump strategic interests? While Asia readies its pieces, another powder keg waits in the Middle East, a region where one spark could ignite a wildfire and draw Europe into the chaos.
They've already been hit.
Israel, Iran, and Europe's fractures. Old rivalries never go away in the Middle East, where a single spark can turn into a wildfire. Iran and Israel are at the center of it all. The two countries have been engaged in a shadow war for years, using airstrikes and proxies rather than outright combat. Iran supports militias in Syria and Iraq, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and Hezbollah in Lebanon, among other armed groups in the region. In response, Israel regularly targets Iranian assets in Syria and ruthlessly gets ready for a wider conflict. In April 2024, Iran sent hundreds of drones and missiles straight at Israel, a historic escalation that almost caused the conflict to blow up. The Gulf countries and the United States might be dragged in. Russia, which is already in Syria, might as well. The repercussions can extend well beyond the area. Then there is Europe, which is both politically divided and physically close. The EU represents togetherness on paper, however, fissures are visible beneath the surface. The bloc's two heavyweights, France and Germany, frequently disagree on defense spending and military strategy. Following Brexit, the UK is pursuing its own path. The EU's agreement on sanctions and foreign policy has been challenged by Hungary's growing friendliness with Russia.
But the truth is that we are fighting a war for the entire universe, for the free world.
Will Europe be prepared to unite in the event of a wider conflict in the Middle East or elsewhere? Or will its response be paralyzed by internal divisions? Europe's division may prove costly in a time when disputes are no longer isolated. The Middle East is still one of the most likely flashpoints as tensions grow globally, and how Europe reacts could determine what happens next. Because indecision can be just as hazardous in this game as taking action. Now, let's put all the pieces on the board. If the unthinkable happens, if World War III erupts, who's siding with whom? It's time to map out the most likely alliances, the hypothetical alliances. Who would support whom would be the most pressing subject on everyone's mind if World War III broke out. A terrifying but worthwhile situation. Let's dissect it. On one side, we might observe what some analysts call a new axis, one that isn't formally defined by treaties, but is united by a common grievance against Western domination and a desire to alter the balance of power in the world. Russia, which is currently fighting a protracted war in Ukraine and is becoming more and more cut off from the West, would probably lead this group. An economic giant with aspirations for the world and a growing military presence, particularly in the South China Sea and the area surrounding Taiwan, China would be a key pillar. Long a pariah state, North Korea has strengthened its relations with Beijing and Moscow by providing Russia with military supplies in exchange for diplomatic protection and technological advancements. Iran is a formidable contender for alliance as well. It collaborates with China and Russia on energy and security issues and has backed proxy forces throughout the Middle East.
My honourable friend is actually right. I mean, there are a variety of legal arguments that can be deployed.
The Western coalition is on the opposing side. This would probably include countries with close military relations and a common goal in maintaining the status quo in the world, such as the United States, the United Kingdom, France and Japan. Germany might be in favour, but its military caution may prevent it from getting involved right away. Australia would most likely support the United States and its allies in the Indo-Pacific. Despite being formally non-aligned, India may lean toward the West, depending on the conflict, especially if China is involved. Israel would probably support the Western alliance as well, given the risks posed by Iran and its allies. It's not a straightforward two-sided chessboard, though. Many nations in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa may decide to remain neutral, at least initially, in order to weigh the risks before picking a side. Alliances are no longer assured in a multipolar world, and remaining neutral could become a calculated decision. It sounds like a movie plot, but this is our world. And if these lines are drawn, the consequences won't be just political, they'll be deeply human. Final scene, the cost of war. In the end, there is no real winner in a world war, that much is certain. Millions of lives would be lost. Cities would be destroyed, the economy would be destroyed, and generations would be traumatized. The price would be enormous. Lack of energy and food would lead to anarchy. And what about the human cost? Unthinkable. With each passing day, tensions increase, alliances strengthen, and in the end, threats become more audible. Right now, the clock is ticking. The only question that remains is this: are we witnessing peace, or just the calm before the storm? Let me know your thoughts on this video. Do you think we will witness new allegiances, or will the old ones prevail? The comment section is open for discussion, and if you liked this video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Thanks for watching.